NordVPN is becoming more than just a VPN. Threat protection will guard your device against malicious websites, malware, trackers, and intrusive ads, even if you're not connected to a VPN server at the time. Step up your cybersecurity and stay safe.
Hi everybody, this is Crypto Rich. I'm joined by Alex Krainer and we're going to be talking about what is going on in the world and principally about war and how come the West is always at war. Now before I introduce Alex and before we begin, please subscribe, follow me on Twitter, CryptoRichYT, and also follow Alex at Naked Hedgie on Twitter. What a great name, Naked Hedgie. And also follow me on bit.ly/CryptoRich3Speak and bit.ly/CryptoRichOdyssee. Hey, Alex, thank you so much for making yourselves available. I said yourself.
Oh, always a pleasure. Always a pleasure, Rich. Good to be with you.
Yes. And I just want to share something with you, which will lead us into this conversation. Yesterday, I was talking to a friend of mine, a very old reconstructed lefty. And she was talking about how she said, I was part of a collective, in a print collective. And I said, oh, that must have been the 70s. Like a cooperative collective workers group or whatever, right? She goes, yeah, and we talked about the miners' strike and the poll tax and Thatcher and everything like that. And I told her how I voted Brexit and she voted Remain, and we talked about some other stuff and, no longer traditional left-wing positions. And then I said to her about Trump, and it's something amazing, Alex. Everybody's like with me about Brexit. Yeah, you can vote Brexit. But I mentioned Trump. Oh my God, Trump is the worst. And I said, look, he didn't start any new wars. Since he's the first president since Carter to not start a new war, which for me is a big deal compared to Barack Obama, that smooth talking assassin who destroyed many countries.
Yeah.
And she said that's actually a very good point. I hadn't thought of it that way. Because and then I was thinking about it afterwards, and this may lead into what you want us to talk about. Trump is a threat, and Corbyn is a threat to the military industrial complex. Ukraine is a massive money laundering operation. And one of the reasons why I think the West keeps perpetuating war is for the oligarchs to enrich themselves by using war as a means to line their pockets.
Yes. And, I've noticed that certain people get the exact same treatment from the establishment media as Russia gets, Vladimir Putin, Xi Jinping, China, Chinese Communist Party, and then same category, Donald Trump, Jeremy Corbyn, and lately Elon Musk as well.
Elon Musk, Viktor Orban.
Viktor Orban, yes. And I see the same people piling in to demonize this. For example, there's this Swedish academic, Anders Aslund, who should be a lot more famous than he is, because he's one of the top people that wrecked Russia in the 1990s. He was one of the architects of Russia's transition from, communism to capitalism, which ended up plunging Russia into the longest recession on record in the 20th century, when Russia, its economy collapsed worse than it did during World War II. So the GDP contraction was greater than, the Soviet Union had during the whole duration of World War II, and Russia lost between 5 and 6 million people during the 1990s beyond the normal population trends. So this transition was extremely traumatic, and this professor, economist Anders Aslund, was one of the top architects of that transition. He's a rabid, extreme, practically foam at the mouth Russophobians. I follow him on Twitter, and his practically every tweet he tweets is something hateful towards Russia. And now lately, I've seen a lot of his tweets are rabid hatred of Elon Musk.
Okay.
which is very strange because, he has nothing to do with Elon Musk. It's none of his business. He's Swedish. Elon Musk is in the United States. It's a very odd thing, but it seems that the certain same category of people who are maybe tasked with being opinion leaders, which are meant to be taken seriously in the like in the intellectual and academic circles. I don't know if they get if they get these talking points that they're supposed to promote, but in the same way that he's been demonizing Russia nonstop, and also Donald Trump, now he's demonizing also Elon Musk. So it tells me that it seems that the establishment is feeling very much under threat, and it seems to me that there's a whole array of players that are now opposed to this globalist establishment. And I'll tell you something interesting about Elon Musk, which I didn't appreciate, because when he took over Twitter,
Mhm.
I didn't know what to think. I tended to think probably controlled opposition, because they're gonna get the new owner same as the old owner. We're gonna have for a few weeks or a few months we're gonna think that we're in a free speech environment. People are gonna maybe even let their guard down a little bit, and then we're going to go back to the normal, to the same old, same old. But then one of my acquaintances told me that actually, Elon Musk makes most of his money from the Pentagon.
He does.
And so I thought, oh, that's really interesting. Okay, that's a good data point to know. And then a few weeks ago, 2 or 3 months ago, I read that Elon Musk got a large contract with U.S. Space Forces. His SpaceX program got a large contract
From
with U.S. Space Forces. Now, U.S. Space Force was set up by Donald Trump. And remember when he set up the Space Force, everybody was, oh my God, what an idiot. What is this? This has nothing to do with anybody. We don't need this kind of thing. This is going to be a big waste of money, blah, 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 blah. But actually, what I actually thought at the time that he was doing was that Donald Trump was creating a brand new division of the U.S. military, a brand new branch, which he could staff with people he chose. Because the Army, the Navy, the Air Force have been there for decades. They've been probably infiltrated by these globalists.
Well, I understand that. Just on that,
Yeah.
I understand that Obama got rid of all the Patriot generals in the armed forces. He replaced them with WEF acolytes.
Yeah, well, okay, I didn't know that, but it doesn't surprise me at all. Of course, this was his task. This was his assignment. And so, the fact that Trump went and created a new branch of the military was probably so that he could virgin staff it with people he chose, and then he could, siphon probably tens, if not hundreds of billions of dollars through that new branch in a way that it could be under his control. And so, the fact that Elon Musk's SpaceX got a large contract with the Space Forces tells me something. And then one of the large European global systemically important banks, which is, I think, it seems to me that it's not on board with, the Goldman Sachs, JP Morgans, and UBSs of this world, made a large investment in SpaceX. And I actually have reasons to believe that this bank is not on board with the rest of the globalists.
Okay.
Because they are very active in the Eurasian Multipolar Integrations Program.
And can you say what bank this is?
Yeah, Intesa San Paolo.
Intesa San Paolo. Okay, I don't know them.
Yeah, Italian.
Italian bank. Okay.
And so all these little dots, if you connect them, you get a vague sense that there's a real opposition to this globalist movement, to these Davos elites. and that it's not just the Russians and the Chinese, that they're actually, maybe not anti-humanist, patriotic people who still are near the seat of power. And I think that Donald Trump is one of them. And it is for that reason that he's being treated by the media in the same way as Vladimir Putin is, Xi Jinping. And this is why many people who, are libertarians, or they're leftist, traditional leftist kind of people who uh, maybe still want world peace and don't want, pervasive censorship,
Yep.
police states.
Who believe in the value of the Nuremberg Code.
Exactly.
I'm
These
one of those.
people think that Donald Trump is the devil
Okay,
because he has been treated like the devil in the media for many, many years now. And you know how it is with the mainstream media. When they take somebody on the bad side, there cannot be one even halfway nuanced story about them. It's all just bad. It's all just negative. And it's so pervasive that, even if you know that the media are lying to you, it, like the dirt does rub off.
Yeah. Okay.
And so, that's why I think your friend, in spite of everything, ended up with an extremely negative opinion about Donald Trump.
I mean, well, yeah. I mean, but there's so much smearing of him over so many years. And was it Goebbels said, if you repeat a lie often enough, then it becomes like the truth. People believe it. But I want to say about Elon Musk, to take it there, because there was his recent trip to Israel, where essentially it seemed to me from the pronouncements that he made is that he's on the side of the Zionists, offering to rebuild and talking about how the Israelis are suffering, but not even-handed. He wasn't being even-handed in going to go and visit Gaza as he was invited to do so. And also the appointment of Yacarino. And then I know there is censorship on X. People do get shadow banned. They do get censored. That still goes on. Alex Jones is not yet back on Twitter. So what do you say to that?
I don't know, but Rich, you remember what happened to Jeremy Corbyn?
Yeah.
I think that if you go against the Zionist movement, if you fall afoul of Israel, I think that they come at you with extreme prejudice, and they can completely destroy you, as they did to Jeremy Corbyn. So I think that many, probably public leaders, many politicians, took that as a real lesson. And so, I wondered about Robert F. Kennedy Jr., about some of his statements, about some of Donald Trump's statements, and so forth. And I thought, extraordinarily inappropriate, very unbalanced, very biased. Why? And I thought they must be afraid of falling afoul of this because they don't want to be Jeremy Corbyn.
Could be that, but I mean, with Trump,
I wanted to get back a second to Elon Musk, because I think that it's very difficult. No, not Elon Musk, Donald Trump.
Yeah.
One of the things that I pointed, you pointed out to your friend that he never started any of the new wars. One of the way he earned a lot of contempt and even hatred from people is when he kept U.S. troops in Syria. He said, like, "Oh, we're just keeping them there for the oil." Remember?
Yeah, but he wanted to get them out first. The Pentagon refused.
Exactly. So he wanted to get them out first, and then he got completely sabotaged by the swamp, by the deep state structures in his government, and then he said, "Oh, all right, we're gonna keep the troops in, but we're gonna do it just to take the oil. We're just gonna take the Syrian oil." And so people thought, like, "Oh, how inappropriate, how tasteless, how distasteful and awful." But what he actually did in that what people don't realize is that he retaliated against the people who sabotaged him, because the U.S. occupation of Syria really needs the support of the European NATO partners of the United States. And him saying that we're keeping the troops there just to take the oil completely blew out the foundation from under the European support for U.S. occupation of Syria. And so, this was so important that the CIA actually had study groups and memoranda written about how to secure European support, how to keep European support for all these imperial adventures. And I just had some notes about this, and so it was leaked by the WikiLeaks, but it was a classified CIA quote unquote red cell memorandum. And so the title was created by Bush Cheney administration, and the CIA director at the time was George Tenet. And the title of the memorandum was Afghanistan: Sustaining West European Support for the NATO-led Mission, Why Counting on Apathy Might Not Be Enough. So, European apathy was not enough. They needed to have this whole policy of how to approach the European nations in order to make sure that they are supportive of the mission in Afghanistan, mission in Iraq, mission in Syria, and so forth. So when Trump said, we're going to stay there for the oil, he completely destroyed that. And the result was that one of the first was the Dutch government, which had to withdraw from the mission. But basically, the European support for this crumbled as a result. So, interpreting Trump's 4 years in office is very, very tricky, because he was never able to take the swamp head on. He had to do these various, 3D chess moves and curveballs that seemed like insanity. It seemed crazy, but there really was a method to the madness. And I think that one thing that was consistent in all of his major policy moves was rolling back America's imperial engagements abroad, including the Abraham Accords, including moving U.S. embassy to Jerusalem, because he was signaling to the region, we are not an honest broker. Do not rely on us.
Okay, and then could that have also been behind his, and I don't know if it was his or with Jared Kushner, their plan for peace in Israel, which essentially would have broken up Israel and the occupied territories. The territories would have been Bantustans, disconnected from each other, with roads connecting them. And I looked at it, I was like, oh my God, this is like the apartheid South Africa state. There was just no way that it was going to be acceptable to the Palestinians or the adjoining Muslim nations.
Yeah, it's very, very difficult to judge these things. He did do, in my mind, he did do some major mistakes, because he was, for example, the Soleimani assassination in Iraq.
Yeah,
I think that was a blunder. I think it was a major blunder. But one thing we know about Donald Trump's administration is that he was surrounded by people who exerted a lot of pressure on him to drive policy in their direction. And I think that the assassination of Soleimani was one blunder as a result of that. We also know, for example, that there was in I think it was in June 2019 when the Iranians blew up a U.S. drone over the Persian Gulf, and then there was this huge pressure building on Trump to launch a retaliation raid against Iran, which would have probably triggered another major war in the Middle East. And he said no. He resisted that. But what's more interesting about that episode is what we learned afterwards, because then Anonymous leaked the cables that were being exchanged between London and the British embassy in Washington. And the ambassador at the time was Sir Kim Darroch. And Sir Kim Darroch was apparently the ringleader of this cabal that was trying to pressure Trump into launching an attack on Iran. And then when he said no, then there was this fury of frustration. And Kim Darroch said that, Trump is not serious. There was a lot of very undiplomatic statements there. And among other things, Sir Kim Darroch said that Trump was never on board. Yeah. What he meant by that, he was never on board with going to war against Iran.
Mm.
And so, as a result, Sir Kim Darroch had to be withdrawn and replaced with a different ambassador because it became completely a scandal. But all scandals that involve Britain are always immediately kind of muffled and silenced, and so people usually are not even aware that any of this is happening. But the thing was very real, and it was quite a serious diplomatic incident between the United States and Britain, and this is why Sir Kim Darroch had to be recalled and replaced. But one of the things that he was saying in those cables before Trump said no was that, yeah, Trump is not on board, but we can influence it by flooding the zone around him. He used that term, flooding the zone, meaning that like every advisor that he talks to is telling him, no, retaliating is the right thing to do. No, we should attack Iran. We should bomb Iran. We should launch a missile attack on Iran. Like if everybody tells you, no, you absolutely have to do it. This is the right thing to do. Your re-election depends on this. You should be a wartime president. Then maybe you say like, the hell with it. Let's just do it.
Yeah.
And
you get swayed. It's hard to resist.
Yeah, it becomes different because you're surrounded by these people. And so, I think that something similar happened in the case of Soleimani assassination. We know that Mike Pompeo was the ringleader there, and he eventually prevailed and got Trump to order that assassination. And the Israeli lobby, and then Sheldon Adelson financed his presidential campaign. So obviously they had very, very, very significant influence in the Trump administration. So no question about it that on some policy issue he was manipulated and misguided, and that peace proposal for Israel was probably one of them.
Right.
But there's also a possibility that one of the explanation is that proposing a completely unworkable peace proposal that is going to be rejected 100% is a way of saying, work it out yourselves, don't rely on us. So I would not dismiss that. I think it's unlikely, but I would not dismiss it completely as a possibility. That
right.
That's
or even like, okay, you got this really bad Trump Kushner idea proposal, or you got the two-state solution, or something else that you can create. Okay, so
yes.
the Kushner idea ain't gonna fly because it didn't get revived. Okay.
Yeah.
And then at the beginning I said the one reason why the media has been so out to smear him is because the bankers that make profit off the military-industrial complex and profit from war, that fund the media, ain't going to make any money from Trump. But they must be making a lot of money from Biden, which brings us back to what you said at the beginning, why the West is always at war.
Yeah, I think it's actually the rationale is a lot bigger than just money that the military-industrial complex makes from waging war. I think that's just a convenient thing aside.
Mm-hmm.
But the key thing is collateral, and this is where the story gets a little bit convoluted. But it's very important to understand it because it is absolutely the key moving principle that always leads to imperial expansion and conquest and colonization, which is the which is really the ultimate reason why the West is always at war. Okay, so namely, we have to go back to our monetary system, and our money, all the money in circulation. And I think that most people understand this by now. That all the money that ever goes into circulation is always only the principal, and it's the principle of debt. So if there were no debt in the system, there would be no money in the system at all. The only way any amount of money goes into circulation is by somebody taking on debt.
Mm.
It can be the government, it can be businesses, it can be individuals and households. And so by taking on debt, they put money into circulation, but only the principal. But the principal, the loan has to be paid back with interest, right? So let's say on a typical mortgage, 20, 30-year mortgage, okay, let's say 30-year mortgage at 5% interest, pretty much you're going to be paying double over those 30 years. Let's say you bought a £500,000 house. You have to repay $1 million, but only $500,000 came into circulation. So where do you get the other $500,000? It simply physically doesn't exist anywhere. It's an impossible thing. The only way you can get $1 million is by earning it from other people, by working or selling goods or services into the economy. And then you earn that money off of other people, and then you can pay your £1 million loan. $500,000 loan and $500,000 interest. So the whole scheme depends on other people raising debt, taking on debt, right? And so, but even those people, when they take on debt, they have to pay it back with interest. So more people have to take on debt. And so this is how money actually comes to circulate in our economy, just people taking on debt. And then you having to earn it. It's a massive Ponzi scheme.
Mm.
And a Ponzi scheme is only stable for as long as it grows. So let's say if the market interest rate is 5%, then the monetary mass in an economy has to grow at least at a rate of 5%. If it doesn't, it's mathematically certain that a certain percentage of all the participants are going to go bankrupt.
Yeah.
Because they won't be able to pay back their debts plus interest. And if they go bankrupt, then that purchasing power disappears. Their debt, which represents assets, when you take on debt, the loan you take is a liability to you, and it's an asset to the bank. If you go bankrupt, then that asset on bank's books becomes worthless. So it's just like the bubble implodes. And then if I went bankrupt, then, that bit of purchasing power that exists is going to disappear. So it's going to slightly shrink the economy. One buyer is out of the game. And then, maybe some of my clients are going to go bust also because I won't be able to pay my bills to them. And so maybe they go bust. So what you get is a very fragile system that easily implodes into this deflationary death spiral, because it's a self-reinforcing chain reaction that just like people start going bust, right? And so the system has to continuously grow. But there comes a point where the economy is saturated with debt. Like let's say you're making let's say £100,000. How much debt can you take on? You can't take 10 billion, right?
Yeah.
You can maybe you can maybe be in debt maximum £500,000 in debt at the current interest rate, but no more. And so if you're earning 100 grand, you're £500,000 in debt. You go to a bank and you say like, well, I want to borrow more money. They're going to say no. You're all you're full up. And so the system comes to a point where it can no longer grow. Everybody has a house, everybody has a car or two, everybody has clothes, everybody buys adequate food every week or every month. And so the system stops growing. At that point, the system would have to go into this deflationary death spiral. So what do the bankers do? They are very, their incentive is to keep the system growing, to keep lending out more money, because you need to lend out more money to make everything else from collapsing. But to lend more money, you need collateral, right? Otherwise, you're just printing fiat, and then the whole currency thing is going to become worthless. And so, where do you get more collateral? Well, you look across the border. Maybe your neighbors have nice oil resources, or gold mines, or iron ore mines, and whatever. So you want to take control of that, because then that becomes your collateral. Because then, I don't know, for example, if I'm a banker and I can take the neighboring country has some resource wealth, and maybe my clients, the corporations that are my clients, if they could develop those resources and I could finance that development, that becomes a huge asset on my books. Mm. All right, so let's make this whole thing real, so that people have an idea that it's not just abstract concepts, but this is actually how things happen. So in 1991, the Soviet Union collapsed, right? And almost immediately, Dick Cheney's Halliburton sent prospecting teams to the Caspian region to see about the oil resources there, the oil reserves that were available there. And they came back with a report saying that this could be another Saudi Arabia worth of oil reserves, and that it could be worth multiple trillions of dollars. The very same year, General Richard Secord, who was the CIA veteran dirty trickster, went to Baku, Azerbaijan. So Baku is a capital of Azerbaijan, which is on the coast of the Caspian Sea. And he set up a CIA front company called Mega Oil. Mm-hmm. And he also set up an airline. And he used that airline to secretly transport the jihadi mujahideen from Afghanistan to Baku, to Azerbaijan. And he created in Baku this jihadi hub from which they were managing terror operations throughout the Caucasus. Now, before the Soviet Union collapsed, the Caspian Sea basin was being kind of slowly developed by the Soviet Union, and the only existing pipeline going from Baku was through Dagestan and through Chechnya, through Grozny. And so when Cheney and Halliburton realized that this was a very rich oil reserves area, they planned to take it over. So principally, BP and Amoco decided that they want to get their hands on those resources, and they also planned a pipeline from Baku across friendly allied regimes. So they planned a pipeline through Azerbaijan, across Georgia, and Turkey into Mediterranean port of Ceyhan in Turkey. Well, first they had to make sure that Azerbaijan was properly friendly and allied nation. So in 1993, they organized a coup, and they put in charge President Aliyev, who was then their friendly guy, and then that whole pipeline, Baku, Tbilisi, Ceyhan, became a project. And they also had to destroy the Russian pipeline that went through Dagestan and Chechnya. So what happened is that they started deploying all these mujahideen that they recruited in Afghanistan and elsewhere, to lead terror attacks on in Chechnya and in Dagestan. And so, if you think back in the early 1990s, and I remember that because I was a senior in university and I kind of paid attention to world events. But back in the day, we had CNN and we had Sky News, and that's what I watched every day. And you thought like, oh, these poor Chechens, they just want their independence and they want to exercise their religious freedom after 70 years of communism, and of course they're fighting. And these nasty Russians are waging a war against them. It's a brutal war, and look, Grozny is all destroyed. But what people don't understand is that there was a CIA who cooked up the whole pot, and they stirred the whole pot of terror in Dagestan, in Azerbaijan, in Chechnya, and attacked Russia, not because anybody cared about anybody's human rights or religious rights or independence, but because they wanted to make sure that they control the oil resources of the Caspian region and the pipelines bringing that oil into the Mediterranean and onto the Western markets. And so there was, how do we know all this? There was a secret report published by the Turkish intelligence about all this, which was subsequently leaked to the Times of London, and they ended up published. And so we know how all that happened. But if you were just an unsuspecting consumer of these media, you watch BBC and CNN and all this, and you felt like, wow, all these terrorists and all these wars, and very complicated. It's not that complicated. It's always about resources, because those resources are then a collateral. And then another thing to appreciate is that matters to the bankers. It doesn't so much matter to BP and Amoco, okay? Because in that equation, you had, I don't know, maybe Lukoil or Rosneft who were developing those resources prior. BP and Amoco, for the same low price, could just buy those quantities of oil from them, use their pipeline, and then export it on to the Western markets and make their margin on that. As an alternative to raising these billions of dollars of investment and then developing these resources yourself and carrying the debt. The alternative of buying is an entirely legit. All you care is to make a profit on that trade, right?
Yeah.
So
and
from BP,
doesn't require so much money.
Exactly. So from BP's point of view, or from Amoco's point of view, they don't need to control those resources. They just need to make a deal with the Russians to say, like, well, sell us a million barrels of crude oil per week, and we'll pay for it, and we'll sell it on to our markets. Fine, But to the bankers, it makes all the difference, because if they just do that, then BP and Amoco will not take on these tens of billions of dollars of new debt to develop that. And then, somebody else will be doing it, but that debt will now not be an asset on the books of the Western banks. It will not be the money that will be in the Western Ponzi scheme. It'll be somewhere else. So to the bankers, it makes all the difference. To nobody else, it makes any difference at all. Because, and also, as final consumer, if you and I come to the pump to fill up our tanks, we still have to pay. It doesn't matter whether it was Gazprom or Rosneft that developed the resource, or it was BP or Amoco or Shell or whoever. We still have to pay at the pump, right?
Yeah.
They still have to pay for the development. And maybe if they develop the resource, maybe their margins are a little bit higher. But it's not really true, because I also know once upon a time I used to read McKinsey Quarterly cover to cover. They actually used to, they actually used to produce good analysis. And I was once astonished. I read about the oil industry, and I was astonished that the oil majors, during most of their existence, not only are they not particularly profitable. So I'm not talking about these periods when oil price jumps to, but through most of their existence, because oil used to trade in the $20 per barrel and $30 per barrel and teens, and most of the time they didn't even cover their cost of capital, right? What that tells you is that the bankers are the only ones making all the money. And so, you know, that collateral plays a huge role, a decisive role for the bankers' own Ponzi scheme.
Mm.
In the currency they control and in the banking system that they control, it makes no difference to anybody else. And it also makes, well, yeah, sure, it makes a difference to the military-industrial complex because then they get a lot of money to go wage war elsewhere and to sell arms to Azerbaijan and to the Chechens and to the
But they're
Turks and the
downstream of the bank.
So it makes a difference to the military-industrial complex, but to the refiners of oil, to the traders of oil, to the consumers of oil, it's the same thing. So it's always and in every case this quest for collateral that is the ultimate root cause of imperial conquest, of colonialism, and of this never-ending wars. And you see once you know what to pay attention to, you see the evidence of it all the time and everywhere and across the centuries. And when who was it? The guy who broke the Pentagon Papers.
Daniel Ellsberg?
Yes, Daniel Ellsberg, who wrote when he went to the Pentagon Papers that he was taken aback by the fact that practically all of it was nonstop discussing the mines of tin and rubber and oil, and it was all about that.
Yeah.
And when you read the War is a Racket by Smedley Butler, his whole career, he said, I was the high class racketeer for J.P. Morgan and Standard Oil and all these corporations, and he said I made Haiti safe for the United Fruit, and I made Colombia. He has a whole long paragraph about what his waging war around the world actually accomplished, and he says I was the high class racketeer for Wall Street and the big corporations.
Yep. No, thank you. All wars are bankster wars, and I can get it for resources, given and also looking at Europe's imperial history.
Yes.
Plundering Africa and India for their resources, and Australia and the United States, and North America then, right? All for resources. Very good, very good. Thank you, Alex. Now, the Israel-Gaza conflict, because there was something on Jimmy Dore the other day, and I've come across this, and I remember talking to Tom Luongo about it a few weeks ago. There's the idea of the canal, and then also the gas fields off the coast of Gaza.
Yes.
Now,
and also, in the past, the oil resources of the Middle East.
Yeah.
So, I used to, I came across books and papers in the past, which kind of lay the blame for the whole mess in the Middle East at the foot of the British, and that they, in the same way that we see migrations from North Africa and the Middle East moving to the West and from South America to the United States, that this was like a big migration of Jews from Western European nations to the Palestine, and that they deliberately did this to create like how do you call it, a flashpoint which they could detonate to destabilize the region at any point. And I have to say that at the time when I read these things, I had a hard time believing it, because that is, after everything the Jewish people went through, you kind of wanted to believe that this was some kind of an altruistic thing of giving them their homeland.
Yeah.
And then I just kind of thought like, this is a bridge too far for me. So I kind of parked it. But then when
Alex, can I come in? Can I come in?
Yeah, absolutely.
Because I can get that. That was a whole idea. It's what I was taught and what I read. Yeah, we have a homeland for the Jewish people so that they never ever have to go through anything like the Holocaust again. Except imperialism is not an altruistic exercise. It's not selfless. It may present itself as that, and I can certainly see. When you said before you said flashpoint, I was thinking agent provocateur. You plant these this group of people, colonial settlers, It's colonialism by proxy. We're going to take these Europeans, okay, they're of the Jewish faith, and we're going to plant them in this bit of the land surrounded by Muslims. We're going to arm them, support them, finance them and everything, and give them weaponry and military and intelligence, and then, laud them in the media and everything, and teach everybody about them, that they're the good people and stuff. And then when we want, they're going to shake things up. Like you said a few videos ago about the ants and stuff. Well, now I'm thinking more like wasps. You plant these wasps or these hornets inside a bee's nest.
Yes.
And the hornets go out and attack the bees.
Yes, yes. And you see now the experience that kind of started me questioning everything again was the pandemic.
Yeah.
Because I honestly, and this may be, maybe in itself is not a correct position, but I expected that they would treat Israelis better. Like I would have expected that the pandemic experience in Israel would be more like along the lines of Sweden.
Because
I thought, Rich, from day zero, from day one, I thought that the pandemic was a hoax.
Yeah.
All right. And so I thought that, who can play a large hoax on the whole planet? Well, it has to be at the very top of the pyramid of actual power. And so there you get inevitably to the global banking cartel.
Yeah.
And I thought that in the banking cartel there was some kind of a benevolent concern for Israel and the Jewish people.
Alex, imperialists don't care.
I know. It's it's clear now, but it wasn't clear to me, in that on that case. But the way the experience unfolded, and then Benjamin Netanyahu boasting in Davos how they were using the Israeli population as the largest live experiment, a testing ground for this new vaccine technology that was untested, that nobody knew the safety profile of, the whole thing. How could you do this in even neutral conscience? You couldn't do this in good conscience to anybody, but they did it to the Israeli people. And so I thought, my God, maybe that, and then, like now what happened on October 7th, I was immediately of the opinion that we were dealing with a false flag. So and this false flag, there's a great deal of risk. Like, obviously, the Palestinian people are going to get hurt very badly, but there's also a risk that in unintended consequences, that the Israeli people are going to end up getting really hurt, and I think that they are.
Yeah.
So again, somebody is using them.
Yeah, but
for
Alex,
their own ends.
Absolutely, but Alex, if I can come in here again, right? So one, the nature of imperialism is that whatever a government visits upon other people, they visit upon their own. And given that it was, one way of looking at Israel, that it was set up as a colonial outpost for European imperialists. Well, of course, the people that they're going to put in charge there are going to have the same mentality, like how the never-ending wars of the United States, everything that's been put in place is now being brought home to terrorize the American people, because imperialism comes home and it's happening in Europe. That we're being treated just like the imperial subjects were. So it doesn't surprise me at all that what the Israeli government did to its own people. I mean, in terms of the numbers of people injected, how they were treated and ostracized. You had to have for people who don't know, Israel has one of the highest injection rates in the world. And, I was just horrified that they were continuing in the legacy of Mengele.
Yes. and also one of the heaviest propaganda coverage. Because a friend of mine, Efrat Henningsson, she's an independent journalist in Tel
Yes,
Aviv.
she's been on my
And,
channel. I should maybe get both of you on together.
oh yeah, that would be great. That would be brilliant. I really like her, and she told me that. She said, Israelis are completely clueless. She said, like, people around me, nobody gets it. Like, so few people here get it, which tells you that the propaganda campaign has been very, very heavy and very, very pervasive. And so, obviously, we're talking about a grand deception. So you have done this to your own population, to your own people. So obviously, there is no benevolent care about the Jewish population of the Jewish homeland that was created out of any kind of. So like this whole thing. And I must say, when you and I discuss it like this, it's very clear. It's practically obvious. But it's kind of a level of evil that you kind of think like, no, come on, that can't be it. And then you realize, no, that is it. So there's no difference whatsoever.
Yeah, but the Israeli government isn't doing anything different to what, say, the British government is doing to its own people, or Irish government, or the Dutch government, or what Ukraine has done to its own people.
Yes,
It's
exactly.
absolutely horrific, and being cheered on and supported by European nations, European values. Alex must remember European values. Yeah.
Yes.
And
They carried those.
nobody calling for peace. Anybody who did call for peace was obviously a Putin puppet, and
Yes.
hundreds of thousands of Ukrainian people dead, millions of having their lives destroyed, chaos and conflict in adjoining nations where the Ukrainians have fled to. It's a broken nation. They don't care about us.
Yeah. Clearly.
And then I've been following I'm going to carry on a little bit, right? I've been following what's going on in Ireland. I went to Ireland 20 years ago. I was delivering some seminars out there, and it was just largely homogenous population. I was surprised to see anybody who wasn't Irish. It's like, oh, there's someone. I didn't. Surprised to discover there was a mosque in Dublin, right, which I went to, and it was very, very uncrowded, right, very few people there. Right? And then I was in Ireland for a day. I think earlier on this year, because I took my daughter and her friend, both under 16, for a play date with a friend in Ireland. So I was only there around Dublin Airport for a day, and it looks like London to me. And I was like, oh my God, what's happening? And I've been doing interviews with people from Ireland, like Jana London, part of the Natural Women's Council, and Dr. Pat Morris. And something like, I don't know how many, like 1 in 5 or 1 in 8 of Ireland's population are now migrants. And it's not like the country's booming and that we need people to come and work because we got all these vacancies. No, they just bring them in, and it just stokes up conflict and destroys local culture and tradition.
Yes.
They don't care about us, Alex. We have to care about ourselves and each other.
I think it's worse. It's not that they don't care about us. They want to be rid of us. So it's not that they don't care. There's like an active contempt. There's an active kind of hatred. I don't know if hatred is the right word. I think they're too lazy for that even. It's more like
a detestation.
Annoyance.
No, a detestation.
Yes,
we
yes,
are
exactly.
Eaters. We are ants.
Yes, exactly. We're like
vermin.
Well, you remember in one of those World Economic Forum presentations in Davos, when Yuval Noah Harari was addressing the people, he was actually calling us rats. And you have to kind of see the whole speech to work out that he's actually, when he talks about rats, that he's referring to all the rest of us, because he says, like, we have to figure this out, and I hope that the solutions that are going to be implemented will be the solution formulated by the people in this room and not by the rats. All right.
Oh my God.
Yes.
It's a good thing that it's.
You're right. And so, why would the Israeli rats be any better than the Irish rats or the Ukrainian rats or the Croatian rats or whatever?
Just human.
It's astonishing. It's astonishing. Or the Palestinian rats.
Yeah.
But I think that the reason why things are getting as ugly as they are is because we are actually prevailing.
Yeah.
And things are not, like, practically nothing is going according to what they planned and wanted and intended. They're losing, they're losing everywhere. They're just losing everywhere. And the best they can do is chaos and destruction. They cannot win. They cannot prevail. They cannot not impose their solutions. They can only overturn the table when they see that it's not going their way. So, they lost Syria, and then they started it in Ukraine. And then now they're losing. Now they realize that they're losing Ukraine, so they started it in the Middle East. And then, apparently, Zelensky in an interview last month or in October, Zelensky said that, oh, the next flashpoint is going to be the Balkans, and he said, like, believe me, I know what I'm talking about. And so they're going to try to get trigger some kind of Balkan war there. And so that's all they can do. False flag attacks, trigger wars, terrorism, total surveillance. But guess what? They can't kill us all. They can't even imprison us all. And they sure as hell cannot control us all.
Yeah. Nor can they
And so they lose. They lose. That's just it. It's going to take a while. Maybe it's going to be bumpy along the ride, but they lose. And then we just have to put our heads together, and we have to rethink, reimagine, and rebuild the future. We need to build back better.
Our reset, not their reset.
Exactly. We need our reset. We need to build back better, but the way we want it, not the way they want it.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Alex, thank you so much. Thank you. Do you want to say where people can find you?
All right. Yeah, absolutely. So I'm easy to find on Twitter. My handle is @NakedHedgy. And I have a Substack, Alex Krainer's Trend Compass. And then I have my personal blog, The Naked Hedgy, and I have my professional website, iSystem Trend Following, for people who do portfolio management and trading and investing. And I have a YouTube channel, but that's on my New Year's resolution list for 2023 to post more videos. So far, I haven't posted any this year because I discovered that YouTube is a lot of work. And one thing I'm short of is time. Right? It's just crazy busy, and so unfortunately, I haven't had time to play with YouTube. But I will. I'm going to take it as it is. It's going to be my 2024 New Year's resolution.
Very good. Well, I can give you some tips and advice and support you with that, right? Alex, always a joy and a pleasure to have you on and stuff. And everybody who's watching, comment, like, share, spread this video. And between now and when I see you next, please keep filling your pockets with freedom. This is Our Reset Alex and Our Reset Rich signing out. All the best. Bye-bye.
Take care. Thank you.